Today's video will demonstrate the builder design pattern. Hello, I'm James Helfrich. There are several design patterns which help us to create objects, one of which is the builder, and the builder is useful when an object is created through multiple phases. This video will define the builder design pattern as well as demonstrate how to use it in an application. The builder pattern is a variation of the factory method where the object is constructed in phases. So for an example, let's say I want to create a Porsche 911. Well, there's many different models of 911 we can create. There's the Carrera, the Targa, the Turbo, the Grand Touring, but we also have standard, all-wheel drive, sport, extreme. There's lots of different variations. But now we'll notice that there's actually four different categories. There's the model, there's the drivetrain, there's the performance mode, as well as the roof style. So let's see if we can use the builder design pattern to help us to solve this problem. The first thing we need is a builder ID. This is some mechanism to identify the customer's order. Now, I'm not going to enumerate all the, 50, maybe 75 different Porsches we can have. Instead, I'm going to create a class. I'm going to call it object ID, and it's going to have the model, which is going to be an integer number. It's going to have the four-wheel drive or not. It's going to have the performance mode or not. It's going to have the paint color. It's going to have the color of the seats, the roof style, which is an integer, just three of them, and the trim level. So I have these different types of things. Now I'm just going to make this just a regular structure. I don't need to wrap it in a class, but I could, but this is just for example purposes. All right, so now I'm going to have a builder class, and this class is actually going to construct my Porsche object for me. So I'm going to call this builder. It's not going to have any attributes, which makes you wonder why we're using a class for it, but this is what we use. So I'm going to have my build method, and it's going to take my ID before, and it's going to return a 911. Isn't that cool? I'm also going to have an assemble, and assemble is going to take all the different pieces that were previously created and put them all together into one Porsche 911. I'm also going to need a model from number, and this is going to be a factory. I'm going to need a drive from number and a drive factory, and I'm going to create a roof from number, and this is going to be a roof factory. For an example, this roof factory will have a factory which will take an ID, and there'll be three different variations: the coupe, cabriolet, and the Targa. Okay, so how am I going to construct this? Let's take a look at the build method within the build class. And so it's going to be builder of build, and it's going to take the ID. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the body, and I'm going to call the model factory to create the body for it. And this is going to be according to the different styles. And then I'm going to have the drivetrain from a drivetrain factory, whether it's four-wheel drive or performance. And from that, it's going to create the drivetrain for me. So now I have two different objects, body and drivetrain. Now I have three different roof styles, right? And so I'm going to switch on that, and I'm either going to create the coupe factory, the cabriolet factory, or the Targa factory. And then from that, I'm going to instantiate the roof. So now we see a couple different ways I could do this. I could treat the factory as a function, or I can select which factory I want. And this is just for illustration purposes. Now, my paint color is going to be really straightforward. I just create the paint object out of that. And I'm going to create the seats for my seat factory, and I'm going to create my trim for my trim factory. Now that I have the body, the drivetrain, the roof, the paint, the seats, and the trim pieces, I have all these together. Now I can go and assemble them all together into my Porsche. Now let's take a look at a more concrete example. Here I have the game of chess, and the chess has 64 pieces, and each piece is going to be either a space, a pawn, a knight, a bishop, a rook, a queen, or a king. I like to take this existing code, which does not use any specific object creation strategy, and implement it with the builder. So my piece class just has a default constructor, and now I can assign the various attributes, whether I'm white or black, or whether my position or stuff like that. So in order for me to create a well-formed piece in the board, I'm going to need to do several steps. And to see how this works, I'm going to look at my board. I'm going to reset the board, and I'm going to create a whole bunch of spaces, a whole bunch of pawns, a whole bunch of other pieces. And then when I'm finished with those, I'm going to have to go on and set the position for the pieces as well as set their colors. Okay. Now let's see if we can use the builder to simplify this process. The first thing I'm going to do is create a builder function. And it's going to take a piece. It's going to return a piece, and I'm going to call this builder. And I'm going to not take an ID, but rather I'm going to take a piece type. I'm going to take a position, and I'm going to take a Boolean to tell me whose side it is. Okay, so now that I created the header file for this, I'm going to implement this in implementation. The first thing I'm going to do is instantiate a piece object. All right, now that I've created the piece, the next thing I'm going to do is set its position. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set its color. Okay, now I'm going to return the piece. Now notice how I'm going to create this piece in 3 stages. I'm going to first instantiate the piece type, then I'm going to set its position, and then I'm going to set its color. Now that I've done this, I can now retrofit my code to handle this new builder. Okay, now that I've done this all in one step, I can get rid of my set position code. I can get rid of my set color code, and I'm all set. You can learn more about the builder design pattern in the builder section of the object creation chapter of the software design textbook.